Hey guys, it's Heather. For our conversation on this beautiful muggy Monday morning, sorry. I still wish it was the weekend. Let's imagine you've got a dog. Everything's going great. You add new neighbors or a new family or something, and dog messes up. Dog jumps on the little kid, knocks the little kid down, scrapes her little hands up. Alright, so your solution isn't to lay your hands on that dog. Dog needs to learn not to jump. But, a lot of people might frown on you actually laying a hand on that dog. So, and you don't want the dog to associate, your hand with bad things. So you put an electric collar on this dog, and not only do you, because you're aggravated and you want to protect this child who got their hands scraped, not only do you shock this dog, whenever it jumps, but now you start shocking this dog whenever it approaches somebody. It will never get the opportunity to jump. Because the moment it begins to approach somebody and look for affection, you are going to zap it with this electric collar. And that hurts. You're not marking the dog, you're not laying a hand on the dog, you're not kicking the dog or whipping it, none of that. But you're inflicting pain to teach this dog a lesson. And you don't have to lay a hand on him, not one bit. But you can make sure that dog does not approach anybody without getting shocked. Alright, so now let's go on a control issue power trip. You don't stop. Maybe that dog rolls over and pees itself, but you don't stop until that dog is consistently cowering in a corner and doesn't even look you in the eye. If it ever gets to that point, instead of running away or turning into a total basket case, and or turning into a basket case. Or maybe the dog becomes aggressive and you're like, oh, time to put the dog down. Cannot have anything to do with this dog at all, even if I wanted to. Even if I wanted to shock it, the dog just needs to go down. But yeah, until that dog is consistently cowering in a corner and does not even look at you to decide if it wants to approach you, but just goes on about its life and is, belly up for you to gut it anytime you say boo. But it doesn't jump on that kid anymore. It doesn't jump on anybody anymore. You fix that problem. Fixed it. Good job. Now, how do you feel about how you did it? Would you ever do that? It seems kind of abusive. I think if I saw someone doing that to an animal, I'd rip them a new one. I'd like to say I'd rip their throat out, but I am not that kind of person. Maybe I'd beat them with a bat. I don't know, but there would definitely be authorities involved. Because it's just wrong. Now let's move on and transition this conversation into another topic. John Cedars did a video with I believe he's a social psychologist, works out of a university, and he's on the topic of ostracism. Now, we've talked about ostracism before. Ostracism triggers a part of the brain that processes your pain receptors, like that dog's shock collar. Your brain does not see ostracism any different. It's a survival mechanism. We are social creatures. We depend on each other to live. It is a survival mechanism that makes ostracism in small doses an effective treatment. You want to act like a jerk? Act like a jerk over there. And when you're ready to not be a little jerk, you can come back and talk to me. Chronic ostracism, on the other hand, is a little more than a timeout. Even if you only left that collar on the dog and zapped it anytime it wanted to approach somebody for a day, you've given that dog a lot to get over. All you've done is inflict pain. Didn't leave a mark, didn't leave a bruise, didn't use a hand, didn't raise a fist to it. All you did was inflict pain. That electric shock does not leave a mark on them. Do it for a whole day where they can't even approach anybody and see how long it takes for that dog to be able to show any natural affection. If you're lucky, you haven't given that dog a permanent problem. And a dog isn't even as emotionally complex as a human being. You know, maybe somebody would zap that dog if it came up and jumped. I'm not a great advocate for zapping dogs. Maybe you'd zap that dog if it came up and jumped. This is a real quick, severe consequence, and we're going to be done. And hopefully you've learned your lesson. When you put a kid in timeout, you don't make that timeout so agonizing that the child will never want to even look at you in the eye because you've ruined their natural affection like you've done with that dog. When you put a kid in timeout, you don't make them regret that decision so bad that they wish that they were dead and they don't even know how to cope. Chronic ostracism, I was told by a Jehovah's Witness, is kind of like a timeout. But given the psychological studies that medical science has allowed imaging of the brain to show that it is causing injury and damage and is inflicting and enacting the same part of the brain that processes pain. You are doing no different to that person as you are that dog when you start thinking about it. Now, John Cedars in his video went on to ask, is there any way that you see in the future to penalize abuse in the name of religion? And I got a little bit to say about that, because religions do have some liberties for the sake of being a religion. However, your religion doesn't allow you to beat, stone, execute, or otherwise murder another person in the name of your religion. You may not beat the crap out of your child or spouse in the name of a religion. You may not abuse your child in the name of your religion. You cannot marry children off. In almost any country, you cannot marry off young children because that's what your religion allows. You can't do public whippings. There's a lot of things that religion can't do because it's been deemed like an abominable behavior. And I discussed this with my counselor, and, the way she approached it was kind of along the lines of, governments are starting to test those waters. Because where do you draw the line for what's allowed to be excused by your religion? You can't kill anybody. So you can't abuse your spouse or your children in the name of your religion. There's a line. There is a line. And how do they determine where that line is? Now, if there's medical imaging and science and psychology and research that can make that comparison, because you know for a fact that you would be persecuted if you sat there and tormented that poor animal like we just talked about. You would probably be facing consequences. Where do we draw that line with human beings? And that's part of, I feel like, every time I come up with this video that I want to do and I finally do it, somebody else is doing it. I've heard of a collective consciousness, and I think that's a really interesting concept. I haven't really gotten to read into it a whole lot, but there's a collective consciousness, and I think that's kind of at play here, because it's kind of neat. Yeah, where do you draw that line? I think, as they said in the video, we need to start with that awareness and have these conversations. I think it's important. I've started some research and started trying to reach out a little bit on my own time, which I don't have very much of. But we need to have these conversations. And according to my counselor, governments are kind of stepping in and dipping their toes in the water of where these lines need to be moved some way, somehow, but they need to do so in a way that does not impose on what is legitimately a protected right. Let's talk about it in the comments. Let me know what you think. I'll talk to y'all later.